Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Dialogue with the Youth So on Gunjur Online TV. Today is Friday, once again welcoming all of you all over the world, our fans. Today our program is going to go along and we are going to discuss far-ranging issues, that's both international dimension, but we're going to tailor them into Gambian context. And before we go there, the date is on the 13th of August, 2021. The time in the United Kingdom is almost 8:30. The time in the Gambia should be about 7:30, and Eastern time, it should be about 2:30 or 3:30. But once again, we are so glad today we have a master class, if I am going to say the truth. And one of the sons, the literally sons of our motherland, the Gambia, somebody who has been uncommonly unbiased on his analysis. Only he saw is the Gambian with far-ranging experiences. And if you have followed him in social media and different medium, we will see how he's sowing or the sweep of his erudition in writings, in talking sense, in talking ideas, nothing else but ideas and issues. The history of this world is about biography of great men. And here we're going to hero worship our people, not because we want to praising them, but because of their contribution to the literary world and their fight to free Gambia from dictatorship and continuously to strive to want to see a better Gambia for the common good. Here we have brother Sarjo Bayang. If you don't know him, welcome to Gunjur Online on Dialogue with the Youth. So on Gunjur Online, Mr. Bayang.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ebrima. I'm glad to be on with Gunjur Online. Thank you.
We are humble, my brother, and I'm really, really humble and a little bit emotional to have you in front of us, knowing what you've done for this country, to fight against dictatorship, and you've been all the time, been online radios, writing, putting your resources to where it should be, until we have a Gambia today free of dictatorship. Brother, our topic is going to center on youths and youths and youths and youths. We're going to be, because I know you have huge range of experiences in national youth services and how we can harness our economy and all those things, so that we can have our youth where it should be, because they are the future of the country. They are also the larger percentage of our country are all youths and women, and for that being the case, no country can develop without investing productively on the youth of that country. And before we go there, I will give you the chance to tell us who you are. The young people don't know you that much, maybe, and briefly tell us a little bit of bio, and we can go into our program. Welcome, Mr. Bayang.
Thank you very much, Ebrima. Well, I don't want to send too much on myself as such, but I just want to relate situations to the kind of work I've been doing in Gambia. I think that would be more relevant. In Gambia, I worked for different organizations. I worked for the informal sector. I worked for the mainstream government. Also worked for NGOs and international and local NGOs. But besides, I've also worked around the country, helping grassroots organizations in their development and also giving training. But my area of expertise is more on enterprise development, having worked with the Indigenous Business Advisory Services, IBAS, which was set up by the government of Gambia and UNDP ILO as a strategy for boosting employment and also for sustaining the economy through small and medium enterprises. This was an organization that was sustained by experts and local staff, and then extensive training was provided so that in the event the project phases out, local staff will sustain the operations of IBAS, which was then under the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Employment. I think the ministries keep on changing names, but it was initially the Ministry of Economic Planning and Industrial Development. The whole idea was to give support to the industrial base of the economy. But how far that worked, I cannot attest to such. But we did our little here and there. We've also worked extensively within the country and provided training for a lot of people. The idea was to inculcate enterprise culture so as to induce people into entrepreneurship. So basically, that was it. So I've worked almost all over the Gambia. That's what I have done. Yeah, I dealt with different organizations, also with different groups. From one end of there's no part of the country that I've not done some work. So that's it.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Bayan. Appreciate that really, and we are humbled, to have a very experienced individual, who worked and crisscrossed the whole of the Gambia and know the productive sector of that country that can help us to create wealth in order to tackle poverty. And we cannot do this, because you deal with the small medium enterprises, and training for youths and different people. We see poverty, mushrooming in the Gambia. We see our youths leaving the country, through back ways. It kind of declined, after dictatorship went, but it picked up again, and the youths are going, because probably they don't have hope, probably they don't have what it takes to stay there. But you've worked during Jawara time and through probably Yaya Jammeh time and all those things. What do you think is responsible for the current situation of the youths in that country? The crime, the lack of skills, the unemployment, the back way, all these centers around the youths, and still nothing changes. Give us your analysis.
Right. So if we look at the situation of youth in globally, and then scaling it down to the Gambian context. Now the youth, let's try to identify the youth as as like a high value social capital. Now the youth, we say, are the backbone of the productive sector. This simply means it's the youth that have the energy, they have the skills, and then with some motivation, they are able to do better. Now, if you look at in the context of Gambia, the worrying thing from my experience is that the youth probably are not they are not being planned for, and that is for me that's a very serious issue. The youth, they just been used by the system in different ways. But I don't see a plan, a concrete plan for the youth. Now the youth need to be enterprising. Now, just talking about an enterprising youth population doesn't necessarily mean that all the youths will have to go into business. Now, being enterprising is actually a state of enhanced resourcefulness. Now, people got to be resourceful for them to be able to add value to the economy, from the household level to the societal level to the national level. So if youth and if that is not planned for the youth, what will happen is the youth will be in a state where they do not have anything to hold on to. What they will end up doing is they will look for something somewhere where you don't find it, to plan for the youths, I think it should be a responsibility for any government. And to plan for the youth, actually, it's not something you don't want to watch the youth to grow and say, okay, they are grown up now, we want to look after them. No. Planning for the youth should have started from even before they are born. Before they are born, the youth being the youth being the value adding elements of society. Before even they're born, you should create an environment for them, so that once a child is growing, there is supposed to be a plan to motivate that child from even infancy to adulthood. But in the context of Gambia, it looks like there is no central planning to cultivate that into the youth. So the youth are left alone. So everybody tries very, very hard, and they all look at one direction. And nobody's looking after the youths in a way to induce that culture of resourcefulness in them. This is very, very crucial. I mean, the youth, they are hardworking, yes, but if they are not organized along productive lines, what's going to happen is you're going to have a batch of disgruntled youth who will end up blaming the system to say, well, nothing is being done for us. They are not being planned for. They are not being catered for. They are not being given the enabling environment for them to realize their potential. So as a matter of fact, we end up having a situation where everybody thinks, okay, I have to venture into this wild sea, dead or alive. The ambition that the youth have to go abroad on a journey like that. Now, if something was created for them, then their contribution will actually have an effect on the national economy itself. But in short, what I'm trying to say is that from my experience dealing with the youth, I realize that they are not being better planned for. This I can recall having developed a curriculum for training of youth entrepreneurs, which came to be the National Youth Service. Well, the National Youth Service is not created by me, but the component that I was dealing with was meant to inculcate enterprise culture in youth. So I designed a curriculum in that context and developed it, and then implemented it. Well, there'll be some people. Some of those youths by now are now the grown-ups in society, and I believe some of them are doing well, because even at the time I realized that some of them pick up certain traits. The idea was you got some of them at GTTI, some people have other professional jobs to do, and then the idea is to use that and then embark on an enterprise so that you become useful to yourself and become useful to society. So I think a lot needs to be done to organize the youths along productive lines and then induce them into entrepreneurship, and then support them with seed capital if need be, if that's what it is, so that they can venture into creative enterprises, do something with their talent. A lot of youths even venture into singing. These are all skill areas that needs to be supported. Some of them have other skills, other people have hard skills, others have soft skills. So what I'm saying in short is we need to plan a plan youth body. What is happening at the moment, youth life is associated only with sports, mainly with sports. That is very, I would say that is very sad. People think the youth energy has to be utilized in football, in other sporting events, and then what and what and what. I have not seen a situation where this youth energy, reserve energy of the youth, is actually planned, organized, and set up in a way that by the time somebody gets to a certain age, they are able to identify, useful skills that's going to be a value-adding effect to the whole of society. A very serious government should think of doing that. But the present perception of Gambian youth is one of a reserve body of energy that can be used when it comes to think about football, sports, and then the rest is okay, other jobs like manual stuff. Youths, they have the potential to do more. Youths, those youths there could be scientists, they could be doctors, they could be anything. But that doesn't come by chance. You got to plan it. All we are saying is, I don't think the youth potential is properly looked into as a matter of seriousness on the side of those who are responsible for the human capital development. Youth, they are very crucial human capital input to the entire economy of society. So, but if they are neglected, this present situation is that it has always been that way. The youth are not just, they're not been organized, they're not been helped to get developed in a way that's going to bring something out of them. That is not too late. Even tonight, the youth themselves can start thinking about what is it that I can do? Because inside of every youth, there is a sleeping giant. Now, that sleeping giant needs to be awoken. The idea is some are so smart that they are able to awake their own sleeping giant. But the system, there should be a system in place that should encourage youth to realize the highest potential for their resourcefulness. I keep on saying this. The youth have to be resourceful. So the highest resourceful potential of the youth is yet to be harnessed in Gambia. And I think that's what is responsible for youth backwardness. So the youth have no hope, nobody is planning for them. When they try very hard, we only think of them in terms of sports and stuff like that. I think it's high time we look at the youth as a sector of society and try to plan something for their full utilization as resourceful contributors to the economy. That is not happening as far as my experience is concerned. I've dealt with some situations personally at my own little level with different communities. But I think it should be the responsibility of government and also of regions. Every region should have, a youth body that's not just associated with sports. Tell me, Ebrima, you know it. Anytime we think about youth and sports, we even say youth and what's about youth and sports?
Yeah.
Youth and sports is about, so that means the name youth is synonymous with sports. Even if you look at the government setup, they say the Department of Youth and Sports. Where do we go with that? So it means youth life is just associated with sports. I think we need to go back to the drawing board and look at youth entrepreneurs, youth engineers, youth doctors, youth lawyers, and youth in other productive sectors. We cannot marry youth to sports alone and expect the economy to grow. So what's the role of the youth in this whole economic sphere of things? That is not happening in Gambia. The Department of Youth and Sports is only profiling the youth as, as what would I say? Would I say, like a potential to tap just for sports. So if you look at sports, you got to be active to a certain point. Now, if you get injured in sports, you are not going to be useful anymore. So if your whole time is spent on just sports and you get injured, we lose you. If you get to a certain, if you decline or your stamina diminishes to a certain point, again, you're not useful to the sporting arena. We are looking at a situation where there should be a transition from when you are actively engaged using your youthful energy to a point where you should have your soft skills too, whereby that is growing, because even if your youthful energy declines, your mental capability, once that is enhanced, in fact, you grow. But in a situation where your whole energy is tied down to physical encounters, nobody stays that way. So I hope this brings out a case where the Gambian youth themselves now would start to ask, critical questions regarding what happens if my youthful energy diminishes. This question is pertinent to our national development, because nobody retains and sustains that level of energy from a certain age to another age. You like it or not, you will decline. Your potential, your energy level will drop. But if you have developed something in your soft skill area, that one, the longer it stays, the more useful it becomes. And then that way, we are talking about a productive youth, enterprising, productive youth population that we can hand over the countries to, and they hand it to the next generation. It's been much, but I hope
Yes, no,
this
it's really, really online, in line with, definitely the question. Thank you so much, Mr. Bayan. Sal Cham is online, and he said corruption and bad leadership, corruption and bad leadership is the problem. And Anand Jangom says, Mr. Janneh, corruption and bad followers are the problem of our beloved nation. And Sal said again, they are the future. That's the youth. Any adult wants a child, measure it within yourself. And he said again, farming, fishing, all these sectors are there and nobody is tapping into them. Yes, Mr. And Sal says again, it goes hand in hand with the central government, because it's more likely private sector, but the government owns 55% towards employment. There are a lot of people watching, and they're making their comments. Time to time we will read their comments.
no problem. Yeah.
I want to share this program so that this it can reach to many people, because what we are going to discuss here are going to be very important, because if we know what we are doing, we can tap into the energy of our youths, and this energy can fuel the engine of our growth in that country. But when we are not discussing this, and the youth think, they are so powerless that any government can come and do whatever and promise them with things that are not real, and political time, they are the kids, who are on top of cars and all those things, campaigning and dancing for politicians. But when they come into office, they don't care about the youth. Sarjo, when we were fighting the dictator, some of these things that you are saying, you were expecting, a new government is going to come and put all these fancy ideas that they told us they're going to put in place for the youths, so that our youths can be employed, they can be tooled with skills, different skills, but you went all over the country, the productive sector of that country. What do you think? Where do you think, what are we not planning for these youths? And if we are planning, where are we going to plan, and where are they going to get their employments from? You can give us a little bit of example, because I'm proud. You said you project Gunjur, as a harbor city and a vibrant business hub in propelling the regional economy. So I have that here, so you project Gunjur, to be our harbor, but that harbor can create a lot of jobs. Those are what areas that you mentioned, and a lot of youth in those areas, the whole of Combo, from Tujereng to Kartong, can be employed in that small area called Gunjur Beach, if we harness that place to its full potential. what do you think? What are the other areas, in other places, in other part of the country that youth can be developed so that internal migration can stop, which is all very overcrowded in around Serekunda and all, because one of the areas that we're going to talk about, you said, the drive hard to reach and marginalized communities. Our rural areas are marginalized. Nobody cares of them. Our politicians, our leaders only go there when it's election time. So please move these things together, and let's have an idea what is there in the Gambia that potential leaders that are going to listen, free from corruption, because we are going to come to corruption. I know a lot of people are talking about corruption, but you deal a lot with in corruption. Go
Yeah.
ahead, about your experience and what the potential is. Yes, around
Yeah.
Basile, around Combo, around all the places you went, Sarjo.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. The thing is, when they talk about youth employment, how do you employ somebody who is not employable? You got to inculcate the employable skill in that person before you talk. So if you tell somebody, it's just like in some communities, you name a cow or a chicken or some animal after a little girl or a little boy and say, this is your cow. You tell somebody, I'll employ you. Well, you have not given this person the employable skill. You know, it's how is that possible? There is no compatibility there. You can't. You cannot. If you tell the country's youth that you are going to create employment for them, tell them the other truth. Tell them that you do not even have a platform for employing them. Even if you have the platform, you have not done anything to induce that skill, to enhance that skill. So we're talking about, you create from whatever time they created a department of youth, yeah, and sports. Can you imagine? Department of Youth and Sports. Let's be critical here. Let the youth start asking now, is youth life all about sports? And this is what we see, because when you go to sporting events, yes, it's the youthful population, but come on, they got other things to do. A scientist could be sportive too. An engineer could be sportive too, and then a doctor could also be sportive. So why do you try to bundle the youth population and cast them out as just a population you can tap on for sports? And sports is exciting, and this is why the youth, everybody wants to play football, because yes, football is paying in other places, very good. But what we are saying, that footballer, try to create a doctor of him, try to create an engineer of him, try to create an entrepreneur of him, try to induce enterprise culture in the youth. Now, if there is no enterprise culture, this is even bearing on. Now let's jump a little bit and go to the adult population, because the youth are not enterprising. When they grow into adulthood, they are not enterprising. And this is why in Gambia, whenever people even think about business, they think of money. So they think of money. They think business is all about money. No. The first input of, I'll say this, the primary input of every business is actually not money. The primary input of every enterprise is that skill in the entrepreneur. That is the skill in you that helps you to create something in your mind. You make your mistake in your mind before you commit. But what is happening in Gambia? People just jump in for money, okay, with no idea. And that is because that idea has not been inculcated. So it happened with a lot of adults that they borrow money from the banks, which happened in the past. And rather than utilize this money in the productive sector, they just use it for their own social inducement. I don't want to name the particular line of inducement, but something that makes them happy in society, that is totally diverse from business. We don't want that type of error to repeat itself. So it's high time that the youth starts challenging the system, and the system also tries to challenge the youth. How will the youth challenge the system? The youth should start asking critical questions regarding what is the system doing to, to make the youth enterprising. What is happening to the youth, and what they talk about National Youth Service Scheme, which is supposed to inculcate enterprise culture and then induce or enhance entrepreneurship in youth. As I said in the beginning, being enterprising actually goes beyond your capability to do business. Being enterprising means you definitely have a scope, a solution mind, a mind that looks at different diverse possibilities. And that's what a critical mass of an enterprising youth population will be there to generate solutions, identify solutions, offer solutions. So if that happens, that means wherever you go, there is some youth somewhere that's able to serve a certain need at a cost, So the youth definitely, the youth need to start asking critical questions to say, what are you doing for us? We have something sitting in us. We have our sleeping giant in us, and it's sleeping. Unfortunately, Ibrahim, some people do have their sleeping giant all the time sleeping. Yes, yes. Even if they are awoken, their giant is sleeping inside of them. What is the Gambia government, or what is any government going to do to awake this? And that is where the issue of being enterprising comes into play. Because if you are enterprising, you see yourself as a value-adding contributor. You add value. You think of, what can I do to change this for something better? If something is good, you want it better. But no, I want it even the best. So people compete for enhancing goodness, not people working on crippling one another. But because the youth are not given the proper orientation to see themselves as the value-adding human capital of society, rather they see themselves as competing about stuff that's not very productive, that's not very progressive. So where I'm pointing to is the fact that we need to have a critical mass of very dynamic, enterprising, productive, value-adding youth. People who will keep asking, challenging one another on what is it that you can do about this situation. So, in other words, a youth as a government by itself, even before they think of even government positions, the youth should organize themselves and start asking critical questions and start demanding that the money or the resources that are claimed in their name is actually utilized in enhancing their capability, in enhancing their productivity, in making them useful to themselves and to society. Now, if that culture, if we can get into that stream of thinking where people work hard and then see that they produce something at the end of the day, that means the more people we have thinking that way, then we're not going to be here trying to elbow one another, trying to disturb one another. Rather, we should enhance one another. I'll give this example also. Yes, I've been different parts of the country. I spent a lot of time in place like Farafenye. When I was in Farafenye, I was there as the regional officer, right? But I thought, well, how can I be even more useful? Because I just help business people, yes. But what I also saw a body of youth, that is school people who were going to school at the time. Well, I'm sure some of them can hear me now. I thought what I could do, well, official time was like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. I had a blackboard in my office, and I turned in after official work. I turned my office into a classroom. We, and then the class attracted a lot of very ambitious youth. I can tell you, I can tell you that from that class, that class produced someone who became the regional director for Site Savers International.
Wow.
The same class, yeah, that happened. And that person is hearing me. I don't want to name names. But that same class also produced, during that particular year, the first in Gambia in the secondary school exams. It came from that class. The idea was, what I asked of them was, I don't need you to pay me. I want you to pay attention. And because also I don't claim to be a teacher, I told them that I was only a facilitator, because I would dare not call myself a teacher, not being trained to do that. That probably would have been an encouragement in somebody's territory. I said, no, I'm not. And then I refused to mark their books. Ask them. I said, I cannot mark. I'm not going to mark. What are you going to do? You got to give your book to the one next to you, and they will read your work, and we will all join and criticize your work. You will even join in criticizing your own work. And rather than people getting angry, it was just fun. And it became, I mean, they know the people who attended that class, they know one another, they know what I'm saying. And we still make a joke of it. And I'm happy to say that some of these people are now doing their doctorate, yes, in different parts of the world. Other people are sitting in the system they are today in high positions in government. They know themselves. I don't want to give names. But this is an example of how I thought we could induce something in youth. So I'm not just talking about this. I've done it. I've really done it. I've dealt with youth at a very critical stage of their life, and I try to induce something in them, and then the result is phenomenal. And I'm happy to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that, Brother Sarjo. And before coming back to you again, I say Dr. Nuha says, two of you, Mr. Bayang and Mr. Ebrima, are knowledgeable powerhouse. Well done. Very interesting program. Thank you. Thank you, Nuha. And Eli Gomez says, employment skills are non-existent in the Gambia. Some of us that employ youths in the Gambia have to invest in teaching them required skill before they can deliver. It is just expensive to create jobs in the Gambia. Wow. This is an employer in the Gambia who is employing people, and some of the challenges. I work in the Gambia at Quantum, so I saw those challenges. Some of the people that comes, we will just tell them to write, just composition about themselves, Mamma Mia, just come and see what these people are writing. Sal Cham says, I bet there is more than 1,200 domestic workers in the Gambia. Bindan, he said, why can't they boost that industry for them to pay taxes, better paid and employment contract, so, and Jerry Fadera also is watching, appreciated. Please, this is so important. Brother, share the program so that it can reach to different people. But we need to have discussions about, conversations about, mature conversation, no insult, but to trade in ideas, to banter, to create a marketplace of ideas where we can just jolt each other's thinking, to think about this and to know our priorities as a people, and demand our leaders, so that the little opportunity that they have is to invest on human capacity. The human capacity, there's no way better than putting it into youth, because as Mr. Bayang says, youth has to be planned before they are even born. Some countries that are developed, and I will give you the floor to explain that theory. But the social capital development, that is tied to our growth as a people, our economy and all those things. Tell our leaders, how important it is to invest on human resources, our youth, and that's going to be our goal. That is going to be our diamond. That is going to be our natural resources more than any natural resources if we do that. And then this should not only be meandering within Banjul, Serekunda, or Sukuta, or those places. We have to tap into our productive sectors in other places outside the capital, in our rural areas, so that the youths can stay there, so that they can marry their people, and they can have the infrastructure there, and we can decentralize development. You went all over the country, but before I go, my own brother Lamin Dabo says skill development in form of apprenticeship, which has become the cornerstone of both labor and conservative youth skill enhancement, should be replicated in the Gambia. Although in the Guineas to suit out own situation, it needs strategic investment with a long-term view to create skills reservoir in skill areas which are traditionally dominated by Senegalese and other West African citizens. Today, we look at many artisans, technical skill like plumbing, building, electrical works. It's all dominated by other people. Tell our leaders, this social capital is our way forward. We need to invest in it. We need to give hope to our youth, so that yesterday or 3 days ago, I had our youth just picturing themselves in a dingy board. It's just a badge of honor for them, which is sad for that country. The triple effects of all those kids living. Yes, they can send money, but the role models, the ones that are going to marry our sisters, and so there's a lot of triple effects, of all our youth excoriating, leaving the country because of the buck has to stop with the leadership. Go ahead, Mr. Bayang.
Thank you very much, Ebrima. Talking about development of social capital, this is something that if we look at it critically, social capital is actually developed even from the level of the unborn. Yeah, I mean, some of you who live in some developed countries, you realize that the would-be mothers are cared for, before the babies are born. But again, even after the baby is born, a lot of support in some welfare, scheme of things, a lot of support is given for the child. Now, let's get something clear here. We know, some people live in countries where they get welfare support, okay, which looks like an inducement for them. But let's get the reality. The reality is the system that is giving you, the parent, that support is the child cannot handle that support by the child, him or herself. So you as a parent, you are given that little bit of support so as to look after that child. Do you know why? Because the economy that is generating that welfare support to you is banking on the future of that child to become the person to replace whatever is invested on that child. Let's get this clear. Some people may think they are lucky that they are getting certain benefits or certain welfare, whatever, in different countries, in different contexts. But the reality is the economic undertone for that support is so that you take care of that child to become useful to society. That's the bottom line of it. Whether this is made known to you or not, that's the reality. So we take this in the context of Gambia. Now, if somebody with, say, 2 children or 5 children taken to hospital, they got to struggle even to give them money, even to pay for their medication. The system is not looking after people in situations like that. The system is just counting youth when they are already grown ups. They don't contribute. They don't. The system is not investing. You hear this phrase here, investors in people. You hear it where you find this. It's a slogan. All of if you go to different offices, different organizations say we are investors in people. Don't you see that, Ibrahim? You see it.
Yes, I do say it. Yes, yes.
Exactly. The meaning is simple. They invest in people so that these people become enhanced, and then you can tap on their capabilities. So in Gambia, this is not happening. They only tap on grown-ups, okay, either on the farm, yeah, or on some practical physical engagement, right? We are saying no. The youth now the youth now have they got the they got the bargaining power. You know, you got to have the bargaining power in any business, right? In any business where you don't have bargaining power, you pay the price that is being asked for. So what we are advocating now is for the youth to become that much aware and say, well, actually, what is our stake? You know, the youths have a stake. The youths they are principal stakeholders in any society. They got to be catered for, and then whatever is invested in the youth should have a measured result. You don't just take the youth for granted. As in the case of Gambia, the youth are just taken for granted. So people's times are wasted. This is very serious. Coming to that point, actually the most valuable gift to a youth is actually not money, it's not material, it's time. Because that time is what is running out. So if during between your certain age bracket to another age bracket, you do nothing with your time. Time is a stream of reality that doesn't repeat itself. Every minute that goes is just going. So the time of our youths is wasted, and that is very critical. So we need to now. They got to measure time. They got to have time spans. They got to project manage the youths. They got to say, well, every child of this age, what can we do for them? Right? I mean, if you look at here, for instance, even when it comes to football, some people as long as somebody can walk, they try to buy football jerseys, and then in weekends you see people taking their children to football fields to grow that in them. That's child development, that's youth development. So by the time that child gets to 10 years, that child becomes a full-blown footballer, if football is what they choose to do. That's just an example. I'm not also saying that we should encourage every youth to become a footballer. Although football as an entertainment is good for society, sports is good. Don't let nobody get me wrong. Just because I am not sportic doesn't mean that I'm discouraging sports. No. Yeah, but what I'm simply saying that that sporting youth should also be a potential doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, an investor. This is what we need to create in our youth. This is not being created. And because it's not being created, I would encourage the youth to now come forward and start demanding. They got to demand, yes, because funds are raised in the name of youth. A whole department of youth and sports is created in the name of youth. Now, how can you nail down an entire population of youths, on sports only? That's why you have the youth and sports, I think, is housed at Independence Stadium. Again, that's like you are associating youthhood with sports. So how do we escape it then? How do we escape it? It's high time that those barriers are broken. The youth should be able to say, no, not us and sport, 90%. As it is now, it's almost like youth life is all about 90% sports, the other 10% what, and therefore nothing else to do but to go on the back way. If there was a plan, a properly planned youth population, the child between 5 and 10 years should have a slot, right? So all the children between 5 and 10 years, what do we do with them? All the children between 10 and 15 years, what do? So by the time a child gets to 15 to 18 years, this child is already, it's already enhanced with multiple skills. Then the child will make a choice wherever their, their competitive advantage lies. But you cannot leave people to grow like it happens in homes. Youth life is attire, drinking, football, watching football, supporting football teams. So all that time needs to be looked at. The youth, your most precious gift is not money, it's actually time, because that time is fleeting minute by minute. It's very important that youth start to ask themselves what is happening to our time, and they should challenge whatever sitting government is there. In fact, I think this name, Department of, or the Ministry of Youth and Sports, I would challenge that this is changed. I would actually advocate that we do not have a Department of Youth and Sports and Ministry of Youth and Sports. I think that is grossly abusive to the youth population. You cannot bundle, the most vital, the most potentially productive, social capitals, structure of the country. You take that and just lend it out to sports and say youth sports and culture. Well, if you have youth sports and how can you even blend youth sports and culture? What? I don't get that meaning. Definitely.
Yeah. No,
youth sports and culture. I do not understand it, and I do not subscribe to it. I do not also believe that we should have a Ministry of Youth and Sports, then a Department of Youth and Sports. What are we talking about? It's high time we break away from such. It's not working for us.
No,
over the time, it's been said over and over. We got no result out of it. Let's break it now. Let's say no. The youth population will not be connected to. Well, the youth population will still enjoy sports. Don't get me wrong, but you cannot bundle them with sports. And then, worst of all, you say youth sports and culture. I cannot get. There's no logical link between youth sports and culture. Until somebody wants to school me about it, I am lost for meaning. I cannot see the meaning of it. I need help. Maybe somebody out there is listening. They can help. I don't see the logical connection between youth sports and culture. So that ministry should dissolve. If it is not dissolved, we should rename it and restructure it and put in a system that's going to cater for the youth beyond sports. This is basically my message on that line.
That's true. That's true, because we're not thinking, we are not transforming as a society, and we are not thinking about the contemporary needs of our youth. That's why that have been there for 50 years, 60 years, they are remaining today, and that tells our priorities. Anyway, I have David Junior Paul 5 says, the matter is every employee in the Western countries and America, but in Africa, where would those cleaners will be employed? Those municipal council cleaners are not respected. Much more industrial cleaners, which doesn't exist. Salcham said those are state funds or welfare budget, government responsibility. Standard living should be respected. Mr. Bayang, and you talk about poverty alleviation, and this can be channeled through, small and medium enterprise businesses, or enterprises, small and medium enterprises. But as Eli Gomez said, These are the small the SMEs in the Gambia are kind of strangled because the atmosphere is so toxic for them. They have to do the training. They don't have the skills where they can pick, to develop their businesses. They have to pull people and train them and train them. And the tax, environment also is so crucifying in a way, and they cannot maneuver. So in that case, this theory about poverty alleviation through SMEs, the environment need to open in the Gambia. People the government need to invest, because these things don't come from the sky, from God like that. We need to plan them. We need to. So you can say, you can talk about the poverty alleviation through SMEs and how that is going to impact on employment, on skill developments of our youths also. But you talk about something that is also important. You say the social capital development and growth. You talk about parenting there also. Parenting. You said parenting at the household level provide the primary raw material and first step in building social capital.
That's true.
You can talk about all these things. And before I come to you, Lamin Manjan says, my good brother, good evening, brothers, for hosting another interesting episode of the show. Thanks you for the time and relentless effort to enlighten the population. So Sarjo, people are watching you all over the world. Taking lessons here from what you are saying. I will only plead to them to share more of this program so that it can reach out to our youths. So because our country is slowly sleepwalking into chaos. Because when all these youths population, cascading in the country, they don't know what they're getting frustrated. Drug is injected into the country, and youths are getting more and more useless, because of the environment is not there for them, and they're blaming each other. There's a theft, and armed robbery and banditries and rapes and everything, is happening in that country, and the government is just closing their eyes. Yes, so we can talk about this poverty alleviation through SMEs, but the SMEs, the environment is not there for them. And also you talk about the social capital and development and growth, but crucially, parenting at the household level, which provide the raw material for the first step in building social capital. Here you are. Go ahead, brother.
Thank you very much, Ebrima. Yeah, actually, parenting is very, very crucial because every child is a source of hope for their parents, and every parent wants to develop a child that will also take care of the family at some stage. Now, therefore, it starts at the level of parenting. So parents have a very important role in molding the child and getting them prepared for roles, not only for the home or for the household, but for the entire society. Now we talk, bringing in this issue of using small and medium enterprises as a strategy for poverty alleviation. Now let's look at another reality of Gambia. Now, Gambia, look at Gambia. Gambia is divided into administrative zones. You have, they keep on changing names, but we knew it then as Western Division, Lower River Division, yeah, North Bank Division, McCarthy Island Division, and Upper River Division. Now, these are administrative zones, all right? In the health sector also, they have their regional teams. So again, another zoning. Come to education, you have education, regional education offices, region 1 to whatever, region 4. What we do not have in Gambia is economic zones. Economic zones they're not part of the thinking yet. And I think this is where the youth can also come in and say, well, you know what? We're not going to take this anymore. We are not going to continue inheriting this state of affairs where we just live by chance, hand to mouth. That's not going to work. It's time that the government takes it seriously and create economic zones. yeah, economic zones where people have competitive advantage in whatever they grow. Now that brings back again another experience we had before, where this idea of the national youth for food self-sufficiency came up. Again, I participated in this, in the design, and then the programming, the implementation, and it became something of interest to FAO and Ministry of Agriculture at the time. Whatever ended up happening is now history. But what I'm trying to say about these economic zones is that, for instance, we talk about Gunjur as a harbor. Now, if if you look at the topography of Gunjur, if you look at the natural resources of Gunjur and environment, there are things that you can cultivate there that you cannot cultivate in place like Fatoto, in Basse, or in LRD. The idea is, if you create economic zones, each region will just concentrate what they are able to produce at best and then trade it with other people in other regions. Well, we get this. We get people fishing from the Gunjur beach, and then that fish, we find it in the Basse market. Yeah, but that's still not properly planned. It's been done by individual entrepreneurs, right? We have not still seen government intervention in that line of domestic trade. These are things that needs to be planned. And again, like I say, what's happening, the role of youth in all this is because today the people that we call the youth, they are the next of kin, if you know what I mean. They will be the ones to inherit the bad or good economy of the Gambia. I'm not going to say the Gambian economy is good or bad, but whatever state it is in, the next of kin, the people who are to inherit it, will be these youth. So are you going to inherit this state of economy, and then you also try to you also hand over that state of economy to your next generation and the next generation? What we call the so-called generational poverty. Generational poverty, where one generation of families are so poor, right? They are resource poor, all right? Because they have not been facilitated. They only think of hand to mouth. So another generation comes in that stream of poverty and inherit it, and then the next generation, then the next generation. That's what you call generational poverty. We want to break that chain. To break that chain means the present generation has to say no to it. You first of all have to be aware of your hardship is a result of generational poverty. Now you want to break away from that hardship. It doesn't take rocket science to do it. All you need to do is to change the tools, change the mechanism, change the environment, change the system. We'll talk about system change, but if all that is done, then we're going to break poverty. We're going to halt it at a point, and then we start to create a productive economy where every person is engaged in adding value. So economic zones will play such a role. Gambia doesn't have such economic zones. So individuals are trying. Don't get me wrong. There are individuals who definitely, for purposes of hand to mouth, they go to work. People work. People pay taxes. Yeah. People, keep their families going. That's not planned. That's done because it's a matter of necessity. Like the saying goes, the necessity is the master of invention. People got to survive. So people are doing that at their own accord. And that is like a firefighting survival strategy. You got to do this, or the fire of poverty, the fire of being without will consume you. So it's like firefighting. What we need is, you don't make people firefighters of this poverty. You plan, you intervene, you put down, plans in place, strategies in place, and then come up with something. And you got to engage people as stakeholders. And one of the most important pillars or stakeholders in a nation is the youth population. So creating those economic zones, back to your question, Ebrima, will mean that for every region, the youth population will organize themselves into productive enterprises of whatever is to their best advantage, and they will trade with youths of other regions, and it could be facilitated with a form of transportation, either by river transport or on land, so that the outreach is like, you could reach people online, right? But you could also use the river transport system, and then have refrigerated containers where perishable goods are involved. And Gambia being a small population of less than 5 million, people can circulate enough food. They can generate enough food and circulate enough food, and that will mean a lot of people will be healthy. Now, this is not happening because it's not planned. So individuals are trying, but it's not being planned by the government or by organizations. So it's left to float, like the saying goes, it's done by invisible hands. As in the story, when you recall how this is explained in economic terms, that the economy is being, the production, or the economy is being run by invisible hands. We want the youth hands to be visible. The youths should now come forward and start demanding concrete plans, and start asking for results. So when results are not fulfilling, they should be able to challenge whoever plans and say, well, you know what, this is not working, let's do something else. But there is a lot. People cannot stay docile. That is, you only receive what somebody brings to you. You don't challenge, you don't question. I think the youth, I'm not blaming the youth, but I think the youth now need to come forward and demand what's their due. And then we see what next. And then we got to build the youth capacity to be a critical mass that will definitely be prepared to take on, to roll their sleeves and take on the task of nation building, not by chance, but planned, concerted, progressive, productive efforts. I think that way, we will the economy of Gambia will be run by productive, enterprising youth. That way, maybe another generation will escape the poverty trap, because already we've got past generations, and until the current generation, majority of people are poor. And this poverty, this stream of poverty, we can break it by enhancing productivity, by enhancing entrepreneurship, by making people useful to themselves and to society. If we have a large population like that, then we will be able to roll the economic wheel, and the engine of growth will be kicking, and then the next generation will minimize poverty, and perhaps the generation after will eliminate it or reduce it to a position where, it will not be high felt as it is now felt, that people can go to bed without proper meals. That itself is an ingredient to poverty, because if you don't have meals, you cannot think progressive. So, but we don't have to have meals from handouts. We have to create our own meals, and the youth have a very important role in that creativity.
Yes, that's very true, Mr. Bayan. I just want you to be empowered enough, the youths to know that how powerful they are in that country. They are the majority of that country, and the blue-eye boys and girls of their parents, they can influence them and they can demand things from the government. They don't need to give up and feel like they are toothless lion to the extent that the only way is to run away and plunge yourself in the dinghy boat, trying to cross the Mediterranean, when you can demand and put fire into the foods of your government, so that you demand, because the government know you are powerful. They are making you not be powerless, so that they can continue their bribery, corruption, and embezzlement. And you talk a lot about that, Mr. Bayan. I'm going to come there because you said at some point, you even, I don't know why you said that, might be somebody criticized you. You say my crusade against corruption began long time before Adama Barrow, whom I happen to know longer before he became a president. And you say you corruption, its largest portion of the national cake, with only few mouths, while the economy gets sick and everybody's staying hungry. We are going to come there, but before that, I'm going to go to my brother. Lamin says SME investment in youth creates great impact in skill enhancement, and the government should reward SMEs that take social responsibility seriously. Social responsibility must be encouraged in SMEs, so that they do not see investment in skill enhancement as a cost to scratch their immediate profits, but a strategic asset that can provide skillful and technically enhanced labor pool. Rwanda has just started skill enhancement programs from public schools level to the extent private schools are. It went on and on and on. So you can see how you have the gist of that. And then my own brother Lamin Dabo is watching here. Greetings to him. And Lamin Manja says, thank you, Mr. Bayer. So listening to your arguments on the topic youth, sport, and culture, I do agree with your question on its meaning and relation to actual life-changing strategies for our youth population in the Gambia. I can pick from your narratives, and I do agree the concept of youth development should be much more wide and inclusive than the concept of only sports developments for youth. There are much more opportunities available that can be utilized to enhance this growing. So our Gunju, for example, potential is endless. And you talk about the port, which I feel a little bit excited with it. And I only hope the government will listen to you, because that's the only way forward. Sal Cham, for some reason, he's a little bit away from the Gambia for a while, and he's pressing in Gunjur how beautiful it is. And the Secretarian will be very jealous, to hear that anyway, that Gunjur is this much beautiful. But you talk about corruption. You say, talking about corruption, he says, somebody told you, that's your word. Somebody said it is like a chunk of honeycomb. Chunk of honeycomb. This honeycomb, I know a lot of people that that those who have it locked in their jaws cannot pronounce the name, and this is far-ranging. But corruption is eating up our country. Anything that we plan, the youth empowerment, the youth employment, the skill development, the SMEs to help them, and many other areas, the hospitals. We cannot get it right without fighting against corruption and reduce it to insignificant level, so that but the agents of corruption, the ones that are promoting it, arguably can be our own government. You talk about the revenue collectors in some countries. Some countries, you didn't name Gambia, but you say some countries operate like private banking services. But these are our brothers and our sisters, and backed by the government. Abuse of public position, you talk about that for personal interest, is corruption. But what is important here is the legal and economic justice of corruption. The legal aspect, we don't talk about it most of the time. Talk to us about corruption and juxtapose all the theories to Gambian reality, because Gambia is our country. We cannot quote other countries and leave Gambia there. Gambia is our country. Whatever we discuss, we have to juxtapose it to the position or the situation that is in the Gambia. And this is encouraging, because people are rewarding corrupt people. We are rewarding people who are doing bribery and corruption. And yesterday I have Imam Sidi Ali here, who said corruption and bribery is even worse than worshiping idols, because worshiping idols is between you and God, but corruption is between you and 2 million Gambians, and you have to pay them anything that you think. But this is crippling our country, and it's a badge of honor now for people to be corrupt, for people to sponsor mosque, for people who are corrupt, within 4 years they can be millionaires, and they are the people whose marabouts are very good in counting their counters and whatever, or whose mothers and whose parents, they suffered for their kids and all those things. So corruption is just melting slowly, become settled in our country to the extent that we think it's nothing. People just away with it. If you don't do it, you are backwarded, you are not good enough, or you don't want anything. Mr. Bayang, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ebrima. Ebrima, when we look at corruption in another context, we will link it more to the elites of society. The elites of society have some time ago argued that they are the biggest resource risk, because they feed on our resources and they are not compensating the cost of their feeding. These are people who take positions in public sector employment, and little do they contribute in terms of what keeps them on that position. In fact, corruption begins there. Is where you got people. We have, for example, let's look at Gambia. Let's look at the Gambian economy. Let's look at the number of people in Gambia who studied economics from 50 years ago, 25 years ago, 10 years ago, and still our economy is sick. So where are all those economic doctors? Where are all those economic doctors? Where are all those management experts? So our economy is not being managed, it's also sick. So what do we do? And we are paying people who are supposed to manage the economy for us. We are paying people who are supposed to watch, who are supposed to be the surgeon generals, who can diagnose our economy and say, well, the economy is sick because we have no policy for small and medium enterprises. The economy is sick because we have a corrupt system of service delivery. So nobody is coming up to take that challenge. So the elites, definitely, these are people that we are putting in big offices. We are buying cars that they are using. They are feeding on their title, and they are not even thinking for us, because the most we see is when they come to office late, yeah, and a good part of the day they are just thinking of what they can score for themselves. This is an element of corruption. So we don't only say the people who steal little money, and and then they are caught, or whether they are caught or not. They are not the only corrupt people. The other corrupt people are people who take on titles and they are not delivering. If you have a doctor who is paid so much, but this same doctor or the surgeon is able to save lives, we can see that practical. But if you have an economist or you have a planner who is not planning for the economy, and the economy is sick, this person is not bothered about it, but this person, him or herself, is enjoying a state car, a state office, is paid a lot of money as salary, is able to travel overseas and collect per diems, is able to go on trek and sleep in guest houses. Everything about yourself. You do everything as for your self-inducement, and you are paid for a piece of work. We cannot see what you deliver That is corruption to me. That is serious corruption. And these are many in society. Those are the people I refer to when I say, when we talk about corruption, those people, they are the people who have the honeycomb in, lock up in their jaws. They are eating government money. They are chop. They eat. They don't produce. Those people are the people who are holding the economy behind. So much is paid for their maintenance, and they're not producing anything. We can conduct an audit of people in high office and find out all the money that's paid to keep them in that office. What are they doing? Are they even thinking for us? No. Over 50% of people in public office, they don't care about the public. Let them come forward. If they think they care about the public, let them come forward and deliver something and tell us this is how we care. But we are not seeing results. So for now, we will nail them to the cross that no, they are not productive, and they are sustained at high cost to all of us. So corruption is just a huge one. And I think corruption has even gone to a point that even the youth are being corrupted. Because if you observe as a public, sector worker who is just, sitting on a title and get paid for all that and running around with state cars, doing all that, and you cannot see what they produce. Your next ambition is, oh, I also want to be in that office. So you want to do everything. You are not even asking yourself what skills are required for this. Yes, some of these people are well, you could say they are highly skilled. You don't doubt their skills, but are they employing their skills? That's the question. Because if they were putting their skills to task, we would have conquered poverty to a point. But no, what they even do most is when they earn one project, and that project phases out, they use that experience to say, well, I've done that project and I can also do the next project. They pick on that project also. They feed on their title. They feed on resources. They don't deliver. And most of the times, I've seen this. I'm talking from experience. I've seen projects in Gambia in the tune of millions or billions. What happens there is they use, by the time the project phases out, let's say they would have used 75% of resources with less than 25% of output targets met. How can we eradicate poverty in situations like this? So this is all as a result of corruption. So we need to educate the youth about the effect of corruption, because as a result of corruption, the youth are not being catered for. Youth skills are not being developed. Youth are not being supported in terms of developing their soft skills or hard skills where they are required as an input to the products. I mean to the productive sector. So you got a sector of people sitting down, just using office titles, just feeding on resources, and they are not producing. How can a country develop in that? So Gambia will not develop with this culture of people feeding on titles, because that's what we see. People are just feeding on titles. People are not being challenged to produce. That we got to break that culture. And the people who can do it is the youth, the stakeholders that can do it, that can demand a stop to that, will be the youth. The youth need to organize themselves in a way that they will say no to all those. Once that happens, then we sanitize the public sector. It all starts with the public sector, because of course the private sector is profit oriented. They do what they do, but corruption at the level of the public sector is where where everything is going so badly wrong. And the youth, by the youth coming together now, the youth can form their own government. I'm not saying that they're going to form political parties, no. By their own government, youth bodies coming together and discussing purely youth matters, which is not all the time about youth and sports. So when that happens, youth awareness is greatly enhanced, and the youth will take development in their own hands. They will take their own positions and then make sure that they take what you call the driver's seat. They will drive the economy. As it is now, the people, the semi-youths, and the other people who bank on experience or whatever, they're not moving the economy. Well, when the youth start to take the driving seat, I think situations will change. I mean, this is not like a dream. This is a reality we can feel and touch. We know it's possible. We know every person who is conscious as a youth, you have a stake. You got to demand, your rights, and your rights are you are already coming to inherit a poorly managed economy, a poorly managed system, a corrupt system, a dying economy, a system of suffering masses. You are about to inherit that. That is happening as it is. That's not going to stop. That's likely to happen. But are you ready to change it? So if you inherit it, you should be in a position, because you have already suffered the impact of this mismanagement, this corruption, this lack of planning. You suffer it. Both you and I have suffered it, and that is why we at our levels we sort of challenge it and say no, it's not happening, and we got to challenge ourselves. You cannot challenge others when you don't challenge yourself. Challenging yourself means actually saying, oh no, I'm not going to be part of this. So if all the youths of the Gambia come together and say they're not going to be part of this, that means now they're going to take a new position. The position is, we are suffering as a result of our past mismanagement, past corruptions. What we don't want, we have already inherited it. What we don't want this to continue. We got to make a break to it. Even before we talk about building up the skills, we got to break it and then demand that we want skills to be able to propel this economy. You be an engineer there, you be a doctor there, the other person be somebody. So that way, the youth population become enterprising. As I said in the beginning, having an enterprising youth population doesn't mean the entire youth population going into business. It simply means the youth population is aware of their own productivity, their own resourcefulness, and they are prepared now to play that, or to engage the economy, utilizing their diverse skills. Before you bring division among youths, you should bring them together and organize them into productive economic zones, and then get them busy about that. As it is now, many of the youth are busy about, you belong to that party, that man belongs to the other party. That's too much. It's eating up your time, and your precious gift is this time. You got to use it, and this is the best time for it.
Yes, Mr. Bayan, we don't have much time. We are going to wrap now, but because you said corruption, my crusade against corruption begins long time before Adam Barrow, whom you know very well, before he became a president. Do you think the chunk of honeycomb is locked in Adam Barrow's jaws?
Oh yes. I think we cannot mince words about that. I think Adam Barrow is corrupt. That's it. That is it. There's nothing. Nobody can debate against that. He's corrupt. Yeah, he's corrupt, because corruption means abuse of position for personal gain. Barrow is doing that. So we are not being political here. He's abusing the position of Gambian presidency to get rich. That is corruption. So when we tackle corruption, doesn't even mean stopping Adama alone. It's a question of saying, do we permit another president to abuse office position to get personal wealth? So yes, Barrow is corrupt. We can all see it. He is using the position of Gambian presidency, and he is not thinking for the masses. He is only thinking of himself, and that is even more costly. How can you give a president $150,000 per day for food only, and then give that person office space, fleet of cars? You know, and this person is still not content, still thinking about his head, thinking of what do I amass as wealth, so that even if I'm no longer the president, I can have a restful life. That's a culture of corruption. You know, I think we don't even want to go too much into Adama Barrow's corruption. He's corrupt. There's no question about that.
I think you know, and as you said, you know, in part 26 of one of your writing, you say people need strong institutions. We need to have strong institutions that are bigger than strong men that we have in our country. Strong men, you know, that are there serving for their only interest. But before finally I wrap this up, because you know you are going to come here and we are going to talk about these issues, you know, because I like the idea of, you know, the traffic accident and corruption. You know, I was listening to Tamsir Jallo in TRRC. He almost said the same. He said, you know, whenever you fly to any country, if you want to know how organized that country is, look at the traffic. You know, if you see the traffic, how organized or disorganized is it, that can tell a lot about that country and their economy and the discipline and all. But Brother Lamin says, you know, bro, Gambians have both human capital, that dynamic resources in code, you know, quotation marks, and natural resources, static resources. That mean, you know, he said the only deficient capacity to harness our strategic resources to our natural resources is leadership. My experience working for Ministry of Finance taught me that we have good system but bad operators. You know, two important issues: weed out government waste and enhance taxation, especially tax management and compliance. How can a teacher who paid 5,000 a month pay tax when a builder who get 3,000 probably doesn't take? You know, because you know, Lamin says exactly, and reality match. The core cause of corruption is from top-down system of embezzlement, especially in third world nations like Gambia. Our elites are they're failing us by stealing the resources and sinking the economy daily. It is really alarming and must be challenged to stop. You know, but you know, I will round this up. You know, and I think we will discuss these things again. As I said, you said not interested in politics? Question mark. Intellectual, our know-how people, our old people. Let's get into politics so that we can salvage this country. Because if you refuse, if you want to create a political celibacy because you don't want to muddy your hands and your foods and all those things, nonsense people, clueless people, people who are corrupt are going to come and rule you, and you will going to struggle to get yourself out of it. Let's all get into politics, because politics define where we are going to go as a polity. Once our intellectuals, want our good people, want our faithful people, want our disciplined people, son corruptions, they are going to run after corrupt people for employment, for their livelihoods. Once again, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Bayan, one of the intellectual giants of our country. We're so proud of you and all those who are following us all over the world, and those who are contributing to this fantastic platform. You make this discussion very, very flamboyant, very, 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 very productive because of your engagement. And I thank our brother Lamin Dabo and Lamin Manjang and Sal Cham, you know, for your contribution, and all those who are watching. And I can't finish this without taking a big salute to our technician and boss of Gunjur Online, Lamin Janneh, you know, who is our technical expert behind the scene. He's the boss driver here, not the boss driver that's though. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Bayan. Have a good weekend. And we are going to bring you here. You can give your final words and your final advice to us, especially the way forward. What can we do to stop corruption? Briefly, just 2 minutes, and we will close it there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ebrima. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with Gunjur Online. I've been following your programs, and I think, in fact, this is one of the most progressive platforms as we speak. So the thing is, yes, keep engaging the youth and let the youth understand their role and let them know that they have inherited a system that has failed the youth, and then let them draw the map again. Let them remap Gambia in a way that we're going to identify and then allocate economic zones that will tap on the youth. So I would also close it by saying that yes, this is the moment that the youth should start asking critical questions, especially where the youth and sports is so intertwined that it looks like youth life is all about sporting activities. I think the youth can develop their skills to become more productive, more resourceful to society. So I would encourage every youth to start thinking more critical and start asking more critical questions and demand what is due to the youth. For now, I think the youth are being underserved, and I think that is responsible for all this wretchedness. We can do something about it, but we got to start with the youth. The youth must come together and organize themselves and demand what's their due. I thank everybody. I'm so pleased to be part of this platform, and I would always be happy to be with you, man. So happy. My regards to all of you out there, everybody watching, everybody listening. I can't appreciate everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Bayan. We are humbled. And once again, have a good weekend. And as we said, leadership, leadership, leadership. The buck stop with the leader. Once again, greetings and all of you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.